Hello everyone and welcome to Introduction to Philosophy 2020. I'm Dr. Chris Fleming. I'm an Associate Professor in the School of Humanities and Communication Arts at Western Sydney University, and I'm the Principal Lecturer and Unit Coordinator for Introduction to Philosophy. So welcome aboard. Hope you're going to have a good semester. Students generally have a very positive experience in Introduction to Philosophy, and I hope that is also your experience. Now, what I want to do just quite quickly is give you an orientation to the unit. Now, the first thing that I wanted to clarify was the mode of presentation. So the classes are run as 2-hour lectorials, and as the name would suggest, this is a combination of lecture and tutorials. So partly it's going to be me presenting certain material, lecture material, aided by notes and so on, and partly it's going to be questions and answers and discussions about the material that I have presented. So it turns out to be, I think, a really good way of teaching philosophy and something that's been used for a very long time. Now, it wasn't always called lectorials. We used to call them, when teaching many years ago, they're just called seminars, right? So I think it's a really ideal way of teaching philosophy, these 2-hour blocks of between presentation and discussion, clarification, and so on, often about the material, but also about assessments and so on. Now, having said that, it's important to note, and I said it in the announcement, is that there are no classes in week one, no classes in week one. So what I want you to do during the week is do the reading for week 2. Now, you will find what that is, the reading that you're required to do in the learning guide. So please have a look at your learning guide and do the reading. Now, the readings will all be taken from the prescribed textbook for the semester, which is Robert Solomon, Kathleen Higgins, The Big Questions, A Short Introduction to Philosophy. Now, you don't have to track down a hard copy. There's an electronic copy that you can access through the Views site, also through the library, either way, and so you get access to the textbook as well. So please please have a look at the reading for next week. Readings are really, really important in all units, but especially in philosophy, where it's the place where you can really make some progress in trying to track arguments and so on. Now, please make sure that you are able to access, obviously, the Views site, that you're able to access the text and so on, and also ensure that you are enrolled in one of the classes either at Parramatta or Bankstown. Now, it's important to note that the class at Parramatta is now full. So if you are not enrolled, you won't be able to enroll in Parramatta unless someone drops out. Now, there are a couple of different options that you may have available here. One is to actually do the class at Bankstown, where there are still places left, although how many I'm not exactly sure, but that's one option. Another option is just wait until the unit is run again in a later year and enroll earlier, so that you can secure a place, because places in the unit ran out pretty quickly this time around. Now, if you have questions regarding enrolment, I am not the person that you need or want to speak to. Please address your question via email to enquirieshca@Western Sydney. That's enquirishca@westernsydney.edu.au. And put to the people there, the good people there, your question about enrolments and so on. Now, there'll be people coming into this unit who have some sense of what philosophy is, some having a bit of a sense, and some people having no idea about what philosophy is. And there is no presumed knowledge coming into the unit. So you're quite welcome, even if you have no conception of what philosophy is. It is, I think it's important to note, an incredibly old discipline. In terms of the areas which are studied at university, it is one of the oldest, at least 2,500 1,000 years old, which really makes it about the same age as mathematics. You may not realize it, but a lot of the disciplines you are looking at university, sociology, for instance, or psychology, are only 100 or 200 years old. So philosophy has a very, very long and rich history, which we will be getting some familiarity with throughout the unit. Really what the unit is trying to provide you with is a very sound introduction to basic modes of philosophical reasoning, about some of the major figures and some of the main questions that philosophy asks. Now, one of the handy things about philosophy, in a way, is that all of us are philosophers. And I don't mean that in the sense that we all have deep thoughts, man. But all of us throughout our lives have to devise answers to philosophical questions which are unavoidable. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, we can think about philosophical questions as divided up into one of three fundamental types. One is what we call epistemology. Now, these terms I'm going to throw at you, please don't panic, we're going to go over them and so on, but part of what it means to learn an area of study is to come to terms with some of the terminology, and so there's going to be unfamiliar terms occasionally. And so, as I say, one of these areas of philosophical inquiry, one of the areas which all of us have to provide answers to at some point, is what we call epistemology. And that is about our knowledge, the scope of human knowledge. So the question is, what can human beings really know? What are we capable of knowing? Is there such a thing as objective knowledge, or is it just a matter of personal perspective, that your opinion is as valid as my opinion? Or can we in fact talk about that there are certain truths about the world or about ourselves which are objectively true? It doesn't matter what you or I think about it, they are true regardless. Now that's a very, very important question to answer, and if you answer in the affirmative, there are, well, what kinds of truths are they? Can we know truths about history? Can we know truths about ourselves? Can we know the truths about, say, what other people think, and so on? So these are what you'd call epistemological questions, questions about the scope and nature of human knowledge. What are human beings able to understand? Because you might come up with the idea that, well, human beings really ultimately are not very smart, they're not very sophisticated creatures, and they can't really know much, that we're not really able to know much about the world. On the other hand, you have people that are very ambitious and very confident about human abilities and think, well, no, humans can have very solid knowledge about history and ourselves and so on and so forth. Now, again, the way I presented that sounds probably pretty abstract, but the fact is that we can draw this out through a number of examples, which we will do in class, but that's the first area of inquiry, is what we might call epistemology, which is about the nature, limits, and the scope of human knowledge. The second area of philosophy is what we call metaphysics, and it concerns reality, what is real and what is not real. There are certain things in the world which we might consider having some kind of existence, and other things we don't think do exist. Now, we come into conflicts with each other about these kind of things. Someone might say something like, oh, well, you know, I'm in love. And somebody else says, well, listen, love doesn't really exist. Love is just a silly chemical reaction that human beings have. It doesn't really exist. It's a kind of a delusion, right? So this is a metaphysical idea about what is real and what is not real. Or someone might say, well, you know, I saw a ghost. I was in England, I was in a house and I was haunted, and someone said, well, ghosts don't exist, right? So what's real and what's not real? Now, this is a really important question. Again, the question of what is real or what is not real, what is ultimately real? Does God exist? Do souls exist? Do truths exist? This is another question. Has a metaphysical dimension to it, is what is real and what is not real. So that is what we call metaphysics. And the third area of philosophy, broadly speaking, is ethics. It's about the nature of good and evil. So the question might be, well, is it okay to lie? Under what circumstances is it okay to lie? Some people might say, well, it's never okay to lie. And other people will say, well, it's okay to tell white lies, or maybe it's okay to lie under circumstances where you're going to protect someone's life, or and so on and so forth. So questions about what is good and what is evil. Is corporal or capital punishment okay? Why or why not? And so on. So questions of right or wrong, or good or evil. So again, in summary, we have epistemological questions, questions about human knowledge, the nature of human knowledge, what human beings are capable of knowing or not capable of knowing. What are our intellectual capacities? What is available for humans to be able to understand or not understand? That's epistemology. The second one is metaphysics, which is about the question of reality, what is real or what is not real. And thirdly, ethics, about good and evil or right and wrong. Now they are, again, it's a really big simplification to say that these are the three fundamental questions of philosophy. But I'd put it to you that most philosophical questions at least refer back in some way to those three questions, sometimes in combination. But what I want to do is, when we actually start class, to draw these out, to really start with very, very concrete examples, and then move on from there. I'm going to give you one to conclude this video on. Pretty soon we're going to have automatic cars. We're going to have auto-driving cars which will be able to drive themselves. Now, in this situation, the car doesn't just require engineering capacities, it also has to make ethical decisions. Now, what on earth do I mean by that? Well, imagine that the car is coming along and there are it has a couple of obstacles in front of it. One, say, a dog, and the other, say, I don't know, an old man. The car is not able to stop in time, say. It has to make a decision about which of these two beings to hit. So it has to make a decision about which one of these lives is more valuable than the other life, right? So what happens is that you need to program a certain ethical scheme into automatically driving cars. I've forgotten the exact name of them. Anyway, but you know what I'm talking about. Now, as soon as you do that, the question of these cars is not just a matter of engineering, but suddenly you are having to answer fundamental philosophical questions about the value of different kinds of life, and put this into your car, the algorithms in your car. How do we, how do programmers come up with this knowledge? Well, it requires philosophical reflection. And so what I'm going to try to do is we're going to start in the real world with a lot of examples, and then see if we can draw out from there. We're going to be looking at a range of really interesting case studies in philosophy that impact all of us. But anyway, look, I won't go on. So please have a look at the text, do the reading for next week, be familiar with the learning guide, check that you're enrolled. If there are any problems, again, get through to enquiries@hca@westernsydney.edu.au. And until I see you next, please take care. Welcome aboard. I think you're going to have a good time this semester. I'm sure you will, actually. And bye for now.